Okay, let me just give you a super brief introduction, Etta, and then I don't want to waste any more of your time. Thank you for coming to join us. This is the last webinar of this academic year for the water program team webinar. Safika and I have really enjoyed hosting these this year, and thank you all for coming. So for this one, we have Eta Takele, who is an extension economist in farm management in Southern California, covering a number of counties. So I'll leave it to you, Etta. We have until 1 p.m. And hopefully we'll have a little time for Q&A at the end. So thank you, and just tell me when you want me to advance your slides.
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
Thank you. I will just, because it's for time's sake, I'll just continue. This presentation has two parts: the production part of high density, which was based on a trial. The principal investigator, Dr. Gary Bender, a farm advisor in San Diego, he's now emeritus. And then a 2020 economic analysis using the data that he had from the trial. And I added addressing how these results work together in the whole production system. Not only the results, it's not a partial budget analysis, but how does it these results work in the whole investment prospects, especially looking at concerns of the perceived high cost of high density planting, labor concerns, and how does that work in terms of profit prospects. Next. So avocado production, just for introduction, avocado production in California, as you know, are the coastal regions. Yeah, go ahead. And right now we have only about 52,000 acres in the whole state. Next. Ventura is number one with about 20,000 acres. And San Diego 15,000, and the major other areas, all three of them lumped together, are equal the San Diego size, and there are also minor production in other areas. Next. So looking at the trend, because the background is very important, that's why I'm giving this background. Looking at the trend, from the 70s, there was a growth, and the peak was by 86, 87, but from there on, there was a huge, continuous decline going on. The decline about 37%, and that divided by over a 30-year period is a decline of over 1% per year. And most of that decline was from one region. This is for the whole state. Next. So the decline is in San Diego, most of it, almost, we can say almost all of it. Next. And San Diego had like next 60% of, yeah, good. 60% of California acreage at the time, 87, 88. By 2021, there was a huge decline over the 30-year period, a 2% decline per year. And now it's about 15,000 acres. So that was a huge decline. And the reasons for the decline is sources of water being mainly from the municipalities. There was not much irrigation water from ground or reclaimed water. There are issues of salinity. Also water supply decline, huge urbanization, all that combined, water prices have been increasing at about 5% per year for treated water for the past decade, reaching up to 1,900 per acre foot in some areas in 2020. That means water cost alone was like 7,300 per acre in production costs. Let's go back. Thank you. And so water prices compared to other growing areas really approximate 3 times Ventura, 2 times, and Santa Barbara, 2 times above Riverside, and 6 times above Santa Maria from other growing regions. As you see over here, Gary Bender was visiting a grove whose water was cut off in 2010. Okay, next. Some of the research and education works done in the county to alleviate this problem was the search for efficiency in irrigation management. As you know, drip irrigation and low volume mini sprinklers have become most common systems. Use of monitoring and time-sensitive irrigation, like CMAS practices, are minimized to minimize waste and over irrigation. Right now, ground and remote sensing technologies is recently being developed by Ali Muntazar, farm advisor, Imperial County in Southern California. So we're looking forward for that to be implemented. And there have been also some work in production practices, pruning time and methods to help productivity, cost minimization, organic production. I did a study on that. It didn't go too far. And new variety, lamb variety is being produced, but that is only about 500 acres. Okay, let's go. Good, thank you. Next. Okay. Then high density global interest, the idea had been there for some time, but there have been some perceptions concerning implemented. One of the concerns was overcrowding and the possible need of thinning groves or increased pruning costs after a few years. So the long-term aspect, not much was known regarding the productivity growth aspect, so that concern had been prohibitive for some time to implement it. And also the high establishment cost concern because of higher number of trees, high planting costs, along with labor concerns, availability, and wage increases, regulations. All this had been a concern. And even though the idea was there for some time, it's just recently that high density idea is picking up. Next. So just a global interest briefly in high density, some examples. South Africa, the idea had been since 1990 right now, but there is some uptake in the form of commercial plantings. Mainly they do the Maluma variety. It's known for its upright growing characteristic. Chile, the majority of the planting range from 800 to 1600 trees per hectare, which is significantly higher than most of the global planting, and which is higher also than the California planting. They have also up to 6,000 trees per hectare, really huge. And their variety is mostly Hass variety. Israel is now planting high density, especially supported by availability of technology to desalinate seawater, Hass variety and other varieties they are considering in Israel. In California, of particular interest right now is Jim variety and GM, and that is still in trial phase. Right now it is selling, most of the high density selling is in that variety. So maybe that is the next thing, but we don't have any study done for that yet. Next. So in San Diego County, the traditional avocado planting spacing it was, the typical is 20 by 20 feet by 15 feet, 140 trees per acre. And there are a lot of hillside plantings, as you see on that. And let's go to the next one. So, yeah, let's put it all up there. Okay. So the field trial done by Dr. Gary Bender from 2011 to 2018 for 6 years. Was done in Valley Center, San Diego County, with a grower cooperative. And the two varieties that were looked at were Hass and Lamb Hass varieties with Zutano pollinizer. And the pollinizer is one Zutano tree was planted for every 8 trees of Hass and Lamb Hass varieties for pollination. So that is the field, and the spacing was 10 by 10, 10 feet by 10 feet, 430 trees per acre. So in the trial, what yield was looked at, which eventually translates to returns, irrigation efficiency for water cost minimization, pruning to avoid overcrowding, harvesting ease, and cost effectiveness. 2 methods of pruning were investigated. One, excuse me, one, the whole grove pruned annually, and the other one was excuse me, sorry, to prune half grove 1 year and the other the next year alternatively. So those are the 3 factors that were looked at: yield, irrigation, and pruning. Next. So the results, looking at the yield, see here we see both the Hass and Lamb Hass during the establishment year. Production started the 3rd year. So we see there is a difference between the Hass and the Lamb Hass. More on the average, the Hass has 40% more yield than the Lamb Hass. Although the Lamb Hass is less alternate, and there is, as you see over here, there is between year 4 and year 6, in year 5, there is a huge alternation in the Hass, but still on the average, the yield for the Hass was more than the Lamb Hass. Next. So when we compare the yield with the traditional variety, because the one thing that we are trying to look at is, what does it look like in terms of, are we going to make any improvement compared to the traditional? That's what we are looking at. So high density, so what we are looking at is, here is the comparison between the high density and the traditional planting. And as you see that there is a huge difference between the average yield, and also especially what's important is to look at during the investment or establishment years, the yields were high during the 3rd year, the 4th year, and the 6th year. And that translates in terms of investment cost is really significant. So there is more yield per acre during establishment, and the average yield is about 80% more in high density. Even though the high density is like 3 times more than the traditional, we're not getting 1-to-1 yield increase here, but there is 80% more yield in high density. Next. So in water use, then also we're looking at this table shows us the water use per year, starting the first year. The soil was a high clay content soil. The irrigation monitored and documented using watermark soil irrigation monitors, and the trees were irrigated when the watermarks averaged 35 to 40 centibars. And that proved to be well noted burners of trees. So if you need more information, look at the references. I will give the references at the end. So that what Gary Bender has wrote in terms of how this works. There is a little bit in terms of water application during year 4. It looks like it is high, and the reason being that there was an error. The water was left overnight, and that is the reason it was by mistake. It was over. But we see that towards the end, towards the mature, the 5, the 6, in terms of 45 and 46 inches per acre. So how does that compare with the traditional? Next. So when it compares with the traditional, really, the traditional water use was less during establishment, but when it gets to the production year, there is not much difference from the high density. So that is really where kind of the breakthrough or the advantage, even though the number of trees tripled in high density, the water use was not significantly higher than the traditional planting. This is really a huge advantage. Next. In terms of pruning, again, the trees were kept at 8 feet high for managing density and harvesting yields. As I said, there were 2 methods. One, the alternate, and the other was whole. And here I'm presenting only the alternate, and the reason being there was no significant difference between the whole growth pruning and the alternate side pruning. So in terms of cost per acre, there is a significant difference that the alternate side pruning is more effective than the whole side by 950 acre for mature trees. So when we compare pruning again with the traditional planting, again, we get like only 11 hours more for the 430 trees, and we will see how that will be translated into the cost of production later on. Okay, next. Okay, let's just load everything in this slide. Yeah. Okay. So the economic analysis is a full enterprise budget analysis. As I said, we wanted to look into the investment cost, and we also wanted to look at how the other production systems, how these changes work in the other production systems. So we estimated 6 enterprise budgets for the establishment years 1 and 6, and we will see the numbers for them. And then we amortize the cumulative of those years into by 34 years into the production year, and then we estimated the gross margin and then the profit. Notice in the establishment years, what we did was we estimated the costs and then subtracted the gross returns, and we will see how that's going to be working out in terms of the numbers. So next. So the data from the field trial, what we used was the yield, water use, pruning, and planting. From the grower, all the other production practices, we got that from by working during those years, how the production practices, what kind of production practices he was doing. So we got that by sitting down with the grower and getting interviews of everything. Some the values that might be of interest for us to mention: labor, including fringe benefits and overhead. We really use more than minimum wage. For equipment, 26.70 per hour, and for manual labor, a little over $19. And the price for the product, we use 3 years average, 18, 19, and 20. 139 per pound. Let's go back. Can we go back? Okay. And so the amortization rate was 5.5. That is the California long-term rate of return on agricultural production asset from current income to calculate capital recovery. So, okay, next. Okay. So here are the numbers. The establishment years for the high density, year 1 to year 6. The high cost in year 1, and naturally because of planting. Year 2 and year 3, returns started to kick in and offset some of the costs. Year 4, year 5, and year 6, we had returns to offset some of the costs. And the cumulative establishment cost was $17,500 over the 6-year period. And we will see how significant a difference it is when compared with the traditional. Let's go with to the next one. So in the traditional, as we see, the returns were not that much to offset, as we see in the establishment cost. 85% of the cumulative establishment cost was offset by returns during the establishment, as versus the traditional, only 28% of the cumulative establishment was offset during establishment. So we have a 45,000 as versus 17,500, which is like 60% lower than the traditional planting in high density. Again, the advantage was the early yield that started coming in year 3, as versus the traditional low yield. They both started in year 3, but there was more yield to offset the cumulative establishment cost. So this is really very significant, 45,000 versus 17,500 in establishment. Next. And in production costs, so high density, again, the total production cost and the gross return, we get a gross margin of close to $10,000. That is 44% more than the cost. And gross margin is what is really, with depreciation, that is the taxable income. And returns after paying total taxes, total costs, but not considering the cost of management, is, that's what growers in most cases call it profit. is about 6,300, a 28% returns over the cost. That's what the high density estimate is. And next, this compared with traditional again, with the traditional, if growers really consider profit with all the opportunity cost considered, that was a negative in our cost study as well that we showed. Even though the gross margin is 30%, that means without considering all the asset costs. So so there is also a significant improvement in terms of the production cost. And the significance of the gross margin to a grower depends on how much of it will have to go toward this fixed asset. And if they, for most of them, if they have the land and they're not, they don't have a loan on land or the assets, for the most part, they look at the gross margin. But when we look at the whole economic aspect of it, is the traditional have not been paying off as versus now we get a positive in the high density. Next. Okay. This is a range analysis, really different scenarios, growers from location to location may change, but just I highlighted only the three, one lower than the average that we have and one higher than the average by 1,500 pounds, and also the price range by 25, just in case price drops or price increases. So these are really for risk management or for evaluating the risk of investing, what will be on the lower side and what will be on the higher side, and what will be the average. That will be the most important. Using our example or our assumption, that will be the most important, what I highlighted in the rectangle for the gross margin. So if price falls to, let's say, by 25 cents per pound to $1.14, and at the same time, if the average yield is 14,700, there is still a positive gross margin of 4,255. So there is a different way of looking at it, but this just is for risk management, risk analysis point of view for those people who want to invest and to go into investment. The next one. Yeah, this is where it comes a little bit concerning, is like if the yield is low by 1,500 pounds and the price is drops by 25 cents per pound, the profit will go down to 659. So that is kind of a little bit concerning. So just that for our average, our average really, we were really conservative, and we took the whole average with the whole 6 years alternating, but for mature trees, we're expecting more yield. And in fact, our expectation is to be on the higher side and not on the lower side. Okay, next. So, in summary, compared to traditional planting and given the assumptions in the study, the yield on average is 80% more. The establishment investment cost was 3 times lower. The advantage was high yield returns during year 3 to 6. So replanting, investing potential increased with high density. With irrigation efficiency, we see that we can grow high density with same amount of water. That means, water cost, if we look at it in terms of yield, is only 45 cents per pound in high density, as versus 81 cents per pound in traditional planting. So in high density, 33% of the returns or 33% of the price could cover the water cost, as versus 60% of the returns or 60% of the price cover the irrigation in traditional. That's almost a 30% difference between the two of them. We also see positive profit potential, 44% in gross margin and 24% in profit or in management, returns to management. So next. Now, given that, the question is the application of a high density to a larger scale. So in most of the groups in San Diego County are, I shouldn't say most, but quite a few of the groves in San Diego County are hillside, as you see. So how about in landscape in this? The other one that we saw where the trial was a moderate slope. So not as a steep slope and not as rugged as this one. So is it feasible to assume the same density in all situations? So there is a lot of questions. Would planting a lower density be profitable? Would the cost of pruning be higher in steep slopes? And especially some concern that was expressed by growers here, and also I heard that in New Zealand as well, is that the labor availability and wage increases and overtime payments, would that be affordable? And the other question, the concern was by growers, would overcrowding happen as the trees age? Would we need pruning, more pruning, pulling out? So there are a lot of things that needs to be for future study to be looked at. We looked at only 6 years, so those are the opportunities for further study to look at. So in terms of slope, the Ventura County has more moderate slope, and I think they are having not a typical size high density, but they are all over the places, but some high density are being planted over there. San Diego is also doing some high density. In 2023, 22. Somebody put like 20 acres high density, so it's on experiment basis still. As you know, some growers are investors, they go into it right away, but some growers are also waiting to see more study and more information to come in order to be able to pursue that. As far as San Diego is concerned, would there be more, would there be more planting? There might be more planting, but would we see the same kind of acreage increase because of high density? That's really questionable. Because we are only at 15,000. So what we are looking at is like, a stability and maybe a little more encouragement to the growers or to the investors to increase acreage in that area. But the study came in 2020. After that, we had COVID, so we don't know. At that time, there was not much going on. So the next few years, we will be looking at how the study has influenced them, how the progress is going to be in high density. But generally, high density seems to be, it's here and it's going to go from here on because the world is picking up and doing high density. That's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you, Eta. I'm gonna stop sharing just so we can see each other a little bit better, but I can pull them back up as needed. Yeah, Cameron, go ahead.
Sorry. Hi. I might have missed it because I had to step out. I'm assuming there's a higher costs the first few years with higher density planting. Mm-hmm. So I understand like the total within the study design there is probably more profitable, but are there limitations for growers who may not have as much funds for the initial setup and costs?
Yeah, that's the reason why we are showing the whole 6 years, because so that they can see at the end of it what it is going to be. If you look the first 2 years, that is kind of a little bit may be considered unaffordable. But when you look at the whole establishment cost, that is the reason why we're, in fact, the whole thing is why I didn't do a partial budget analysis is to show them how the whole thing factor in terms of establishment. But having done that, $17,000 per acre establishment kind of is really on the if growers other questions being answered. I mean, they have other questions, like as I said, overcrowding and labor and all that. And if they come across that hurdle and do the investment, really 17,000 per acre is really not much to attain.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any costs within the first year to maybe fourth year that might be more variable in their actual amount based on area from what you've seen? Would water costs be more variable compared to labor costs?
Well, both of them would be variable. Yeah. Okay. Water cost, and again in San Diego, let me just retract back. the perception is that if the current system buying water from the municipalities and there is not going to be any groundwater or that to supplement it, then it's then yeah, there is that challenge. But some development is going on in San Diego in regard to water availability, making groundwater more desalinated and things like that. If that comes forward, then the water cost may be like in Ventura County. Some of it is groundwater and some of it is municipal water. That's why it is 3 times lower. So if that augmentation from groundwater or recycled water is available, then that's a pro.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Cameron Zuber. I'm a orchard crops advisor in Merced. I appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Etta, you alluded to this at the end, and I was just curious if you could elaborate a little bit on like the trend in high density, like adoption of high density avocados.
And Ellen, you're echoing. I can't hear you much.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I don't really know what to do about it.
Would you write it on the chat?
Sure.
Anybody else sees us in the meantime when she's writing her question? Can you speak to the trends in adoption of high density avocados? Oh, okay. Here or in the world? As I said, in California, right now, let me go, yeah, in California, give me a second. Right now, there is a dwarf rootstock trial going on with regard to Jim Scan variety. And from what I heard from the nursery, that 20% of the orders right now for nursery plants are Jim, and that's what 20% of all orders they are counting that, which means it's not the house variety, but it is for this variety. It is picking up mostly around Ventura County, I believe, or some that area. And there is also Marilu Apaya also doing a research in Central California. Just when I hear that she's doing that research in Central California, I couldn't help but think that the citrus industry kind of went from the Southern California to the Central California area. So, that's also, she's also working on several varieties, a different variety in terms of looking at the high density as well. And as I said, the trend is the high density seems to be here, and in the world, Chile is doing it, South Africa is with a different variety, and Israel is also, their technology has helped them do salinize their Mediterranean water or seawater, and so they are also into this high density. Would that answer your question? You're mute, Ellen.
I'm typing another question.
You have another question? Okay. I missed this during your talk, but are you collecting data on costs and returns? Collecting data for what?
Like to address your last question, you said some growers expressed concern about overcrowding, like as the trees age, which like I could see.
Oh, you mean for following up? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
over the life of the
Yeah.
avocados.
Yeah, we need I mean, me or somebody else is. I'm hoping that we get another person for farm management people. We do need farm management people in counties, and so far of the recruitments have not been paying attention to that. So either as long as I'm here before retirement, yeah. Let me just leave it at that. I would like to see the for my own interest as a researcher, I would like to see how it's going to work out down the road. So I have that interest to follow up.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Any final questions or comments? If not, I'll just thank you all for coming, and please join me in thanking Eta for her presentation.
One more thing is that on the abstract, I said a 4% decline, and I was comparing the San Diego with the state, and instead of comparing San Diego with San Diego, so it is only a 2% decline per year. Even anyway, it's a lot of decline.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, great. Thanks for that.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, great to hear about the study. I really appreciate it.
Oh, there is a question here.
Oh no, I think those are just clapping for you.
Okay, thank you, Eta. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Oh, there's no question. Okay.